We definitely experienced a lot of cool stuff together that can never be changed and never be done again with the same innocence.
For nearly 40 years, James Hetfield maintained a careful public stance when discussing former bandmate Dave Mustaine. "Water under the bridge," he'd say, or "that's ancient history." But in a shocking new interview, the Metallica frontman has finally opened up about the truth behind metal's most infamous rivalry, and his unfiltered words have sent shockwaves through the industry. Here's the inside story on what pushed Hetfield to finally speak out, and why his revelations have metal fans worldwide stunned. The breaking point. During what should have been a routine promotional interview for Metallica's upcoming tour dates, Hetfield was asked about the band's evolution over 4 decades. Instead of the usual diplomatic response, something unexpected happened. "Look, I've been taking the high road for 40 years when it comes to Dave," Hetfield began, his voice noticeably tensing. "Every interview, every documentary, every book, Dave's been telling his side of the story, painting himself as the victim, and I've stayed quiet. I'm done with that." The interviewer from Guitar World, clearly caught off guard, tried redirecting to safer territory, but Hetfield was determined to speak his mind. A witness later described it as 40 years of frustration finally boiling over. "People think they know what happened in 1983, but they've only heard one version, Dave's version," Hetfield continued. "The reality was much more complicated and much more difficult for all of us." What followed was a 15-minute unfiltered account that contradicted many of Mustaine's long-held claims about his firing from Metallica. The interview quickly went viral, generating millions of views within hours of publication and igniting fierce debate among metal fans worldwide. The early days. What really happened? The conflict between Hetfield and Mustaine began in 1981, when Metallica was formed in Los Angeles. Lars Ulrich, a Danish drummer with boundless ambition but limited experience, placed an ad in a local paper seeking metal musicians. Hetfield, then 18, answered the call. Together, they began crafting the foundation of what would become thrash metal. Dave Mustaine joined shortly after, bringing technical skill and aggressive playing that helped define the band's early sound. For 2 years, they built Metallica's reputation in the underground metal scene, releasing the demo No Life Till Leather, and developing a following in the Bay Area after relocating to San Francisco. But according to Hetfield's new account, tensions were building from the beginning. Dave was an incredible guitar player, maybe too good for his own good sometimes, Hetfield revealed. But the drinking, the fights, it wasn't just once or twice, it was every day, every show, every rehearsal. We were kids trying to keep a band together, and it became impossible. The breaking point came in April 1983, when Metallica was preparing to record their first full album, Kill 'Em All. According to band lore, Mustaine was abruptly fired, handed a bus ticket from New York back to California, and replaced with Kirk Hammett. In his interview, Hetfield offered new details about that pivotal moment. "We didn't wake up one morning and decide to fire Dave. We tried for months to make it work. We had meetings, made promises to each other, tried everything. But when your guitar player is getting into fistfights with the band, with the audience, with random people, eventually, you have to make a choice, the music or the chaos." Former Metallica road manager Mark Whitaker corroborated Hetfield's account in a separate interview. The band gave Dave multiple chances. The night before he was let go, he got into a physical altercation with James and poured beer over Ron McGovney's bass, shorting out his amp. It wasn't a one-time incident. It was the final straw in a pattern that had become unsustainable. The disputed songs. Songwriting credits remain the most contentious issue between Mustaine and Metallica. Mustaine has maintained for decades that he wrote substantial portions of several songs on Metallica's first 2 albums without proper recognition. In his new interview, Hetfield addressed these claims directly. Dave contributed to The Four Horsemen, which was based on his song Mechanics. He contributed to Jump in the Fire, to Metal Militia, and parts of Phantom Lord. Nobody has ever denied that. But Hetfield challenged Mustaine's characterization. What Dave doesn't talk about is how much those songs changed after he left. The Four Horsemen became a completely different song structurally and lyrically. We kept some of his riffs, yes, but a riff isn't a song. Former Metallica producer Flemming Rasmussen offered perspective. If you listen to the early demos with Dave and compare them to the final recordings, there are significant differences. Bands evolve songs together. It's rarely as simple as, I wrote this, you wrote that. Over 40 years, Kill 'Em All has sold millions of copies, with these disputed tracks becoming staples of Metallica's live shows and generating significant royalties. In the early days of thrash metal, bands often didn't formalize songwriting agreements, explains music industry attorney Brian Rosenblatt. They were creating music, not paperwork. That lack of documentation made later disputes almost inevitable when the stakes grew to millions. The parallel paths. After his departure from Metallica, Mustaine quickly formed Megadeth, driven by what he openly described as a desire to create a band faster and heavier than his former group. For 4 decades, the two bands developed on parallel paths, with Metallica achieving mainstream commercial success, while Megadeth built a reputation for technical precision and political themes. In his interview, Hetfield acknowledged Mustaine's accomplishments. Dave built something incredible with Megadeth. Those early albums, Peace Sells, Rust in Peace, they're untouchable. No one can take that away from him. But Hetfield also expressed frustration with what he sees as Mustaine's inability to celebrate his own success without referencing Metallica. At some point, you have to stop defining yourself by what you lost and start celebrating what you built. Megadeth isn't great because it's not Metallica. It's great because Dave created something unique. Industry insiders note that the Metallica-Megadeth rivalry helped shape the entire thrash metal movement. These bands pushed each other, explains Metal Hammer editor Eleanor Goodman. When Master of Puppets raised the bar, Megadeth responded with Peace Sells. When Megadeth released Rust in Peace, Metallica answered with the Black Album. The competition made both bands better. This creative rivalry extended to their business approaches as well. While Metallica embraced a more mainstream sound and image that opened doors to stadium tours and diamond-selling albums, Megadeth maintained a more technically complex style that appealed to metal purists. Chuck Billy of Testament, who toured with both bands during thrash's heyday, observes, Metallica and Megadeth took different paths to success. James and the guys went bigger, more universal. Dave kept it more intricate, more confrontational. Both approaches worked because they stayed true to who they were. The personal cost. One of the most revealing aspects of Hetfield's interview was his discussion of the emotional toll the decades-long feud has taken on both men. People think it's just about business or music, but it's personal, Hetfield said. Dave and I were friends before all this. We were kids together, dreaming of what Metallica could be. That dream came true for me, but for him it became something different. Hetfield spoke candidly about how Mustaine's repeated public comments affected him personally. Every interview where he brought up the past, every shot he took at Lars or Kirk or me, it reopened old wounds. I tried not to take it personally, but after decades of it, yeah, it hurts. The Metallica frontman also revealed that there had been attempts at reconciliation over the years that the public never saw. There were times we reached out. After Dave's cancer diagnosis, I sent him a personal message. When he got sober, I called to support him. Those moments were real, but then he'd give another interview bringing up 1983 again, and we'd be back to square one. Former Slayer guitarist Kerry King, who has maintained friendships with members of both bands, offered perspective. These guys have more in common than they have differences. They're both clean and sober now, both survived addiction, both built legendary bands. It's tragic that they can't find peace with each other. The broader impact. The metal community's reaction to Hetfield's revelations has been mixed, with fans and musicians taking sides in a debate that spans generations. Anthrax's Scott Ian, who performed alongside both Metallica and Megadeth in the Big Four shows, expressed disappointment. As someone who loves both bands, it's hard to see this wound reopened. Those Big Four shows felt like closure for the whole scene. We were celebrating thrash together, not tearing each other down. Lamb of God's Randy Blythe took a more philosophical view. Every band from my generation was influenced by both Metallica and Megadeth. They're both foundational. This isn't just their story. It's part of all our stories in heavy music. On social media, the reaction has been predictably divided, with hashtags like #Team Hetfield and #Team Mustaine trending within hours of the interview's release. Older fans debated minute details of events from 4 decades ago, while younger listeners expressed surprise at the depth of emotion still attached to the ancient split. Metal Hammer's Goodman notes that this generational aspect makes the feud unique. We now have metal fans in their 50s who witnessed this rivalry from the beginning, alongside teenagers discovering these bands for the first time through streaming. That's why this still matters. It's living history. The industry perspective. Industry veterans see the Hetfield-Mustaine conflict as emblematic of deeper issues in the music business, particularly regarding how young bands make agreements they don't fully understand. What happened with Metallica and Dave was unfortunately common, explains former Megaforce Records executive Marsha Vlasic. Young bands make handshake agreements about songwriting. Then when money starts flowing, those informal arrangements fall apart. Johnny Z, John Zazula, who signed Metallica to their first record deal before his passing in 2022, had previously addressed the context. These were teenagers making decisions that would affect the rest of their lives. There was no blueprint for thrash metal success. They were creating it as they went. The financial stakes have only grown. In 2023, analysts estimated the combined catalog value of Metallica and Megadeth at over $500 million, with disputed songs accounting for tens of millions in potential royalties. What makes this situation unique is the longevity, notes Billboard's chart analyst Jim Asker. These songs have generated revenue for 40 years across vinyl, cassettes, CDs, downloads, and streaming. Few artists maintain that kind of commercial relevance across formats and generations. The silence breaks. Why now? After decades of restraint, what prompted Hetfield to finally speak out? Industry insiders point to several converging factors. James has been through significant personal changes recently, observes one longtime Metallica associate who requested anonymity. His divorce, rehab in 2019, the pandemic, these experiences have him reevaluating his life. Perhaps carrying this old burden no longer made sense. Mustaine's increased media presence during Megadeth's 40th anniversary promotional cycle may have been another catalyst. In recent months, Mustaine has given numerous interviews referencing his Metallica past, including comments that questioned Hetfield's songwriting contributions. There's a pattern where Dave gets more vocal about Metallica when Megadeth has something to promote, notes one veteran metal journalist. Those comments always generate headlines, but there's a cumulative effect. Anyone who knows James knows he's not a chess player with media, says Machine Head's Rob Flynn. If he said it, it's because he felt it in that moment, not because he was plotting some PR strategy. Mustaine's response. Dave Mustaine's initial response to Hetfield's interview came via social media, where he posted a brief but pointed statement. After 40 years, James finally decides to set the record straight. Interesting timing. I've told my truth for decades, and I stand by every word. There are 3 sides to every story. His side, my side, and the truth. The Megadeth founder followed this with a longer statement to select media outlets, challenging several specific points from Hetfield's account. James talks about giving me chances, but doesn't mention that they had already hired Kirk before telling me I was out. He talks about my contributions as if they were minor riff ideas, when he knows those songs were substantially written before I left. Mustaine also addressed the personal dimension. I've made peace with my past. I've congratulated them on their success countless times. But I won't be painted as some out-of-control liability when the reality was, we were all young, all drinking, all making mistakes. Industry observers note that despite the heated exchange, both musicians stopped short of complete character assassination. There's still a level of respect there, observes Mike Portnoy, former Dream Theater drummer who has relationships with both camps. They're criticizing actions and behaviors, not denying each other's talents or achievements. Megadeth is currently in the midst of their 40th anniversary Crush the World tour. with Mustaine reportedly addressing the situation briefly during recent performances, telling audiences, "Some people never stop fighting the last war. I'm more interested in the battles ahead than the ones behind me." The future of the feud. As the metal community digests these revelations, questions remain about what this means for the future relationship between these iconic bands and their leaders. This could go one of two ways, predicts former Judas Priest vocalist Tim "Ripper" Owens. Either this is the final explosion before they eventually find peace, or it's the nail in the coffin for any future reconciliation. Getting everything out in the open can sometimes be the first step to moving forward. The possibility of another Big Four tour now seems remote. Though Slayer has officially retired, Anthrax's Charlie Benante had suggested that discussions were underway about a potential limited run of shows before this controversy erupted. Metal Hammer's Goodman sees potential for eventual healing. Both James and Dave have overcome so much: addiction, health scares, band member departures. They're survivors who've built legendary careers. That shared experience could still be the foundation for reconciliation, even if it seems unlikely right now. The Hetfield-Mustaine relationship remains one of music's most complex and enduring rivalries, a story of friendship, betrayal, competition, and parallel success spanning more than 4 decades. As both bands continue their respective journeys, fans can only hope that these metal titans might someday find a way to celebrate their shared history rather than relitigate it. Until then, the saga continues.